Hello, everyone. We are about to start our Q&A session on Walther's Phenomenology of Mystical Experience. Today, I have the pleasure to have with me Dr. Parker and soon-to-be Dr. Muhl. And they will be in dialogue on the previous beautiful lecture that Julia Muhl gave on Walther. We'll have in this session students from California State University, and meanwhile we'll be connected with the University of Palenberg. So I will give the floor to Dr. Parker, and we'll just follow your dialogue, your questions and answers about Walther. Thanks.
Well, great. Thank you, Susie. Thank you for having me involved in this project. After Julia's talk, I had a number of questions that I wanted to ask. So I'll just kind of work through those now. Of course, if there's any of these questions that Julia doesn't like, she doesn't have to answer them, I suppose. But just to begin, I want to start with a biographical question rather than a straightforwardly philosophical one. So Julia noted at the start of her talk that Walther was raised in an atheistic household, and she alludes to the fact that her father, Otto Walther, was a Marxist, and that she was as well, at least early on in her academic career. As Julia stated, when she initially went to university, she had the plan to be a political agitator, and that she was interested in Marxist philosophy in terms of economics and psychology and these sorts of things. So my question is, what then caused Walther to become interested in religious and mystical experiences and in the existence of God in particular?
Okay, well, yes, the reason why Walther became so interested in religious and mystical experiences was that Walther herself had some mystical experiences. I think her first was in winter 1918. It was at that time where her father became sicker. As I said in my talk, he died in 1919. And I think it was on a train she had this experience where warm light flew into her. She described it like that. And after this experience in this train, she knew that it was her task to keep this light inside, to explore this light and share it with other human beings. This is what she wrote in her autobiography. Therefore, she was more and more interested in experiences which were inexplicable in a scientific way. So, this was the first reason. Later, she had a lot of mystical experiences, which she described in her book, Phenomenology of Mysticism, and also in her autobiography. And those experiences has always this aspect of warm light, which flows into her. She also heard voices and thoughts of other human beings. This is what Walther calls some telepathic experiences. But for me, this is the most extreme version of mystical experiences, which Walther described in her book, Phenomenology of Mysticism. Yeah, for me, it is really interesting to see that there were a lot of women phenomenologists at that time who were interested in the religious world and in religious experiences, but also Heidegger was interested in the field of mysticism. Walther, I know that Walther wants to join his lecture on mysticism, but I think he didn't give it. So, yeah, but me, it's really interesting to see that there were a lot of phenomenologists who were interested in this. And Walther wrote, well, I think she was the first one who wrote her experiences and her ideas about phenomenology of mysticism. And God becomes an important part in Walther's dissertation on ontology of social communities, and also in her book, Phenomenology of Mysticism. So I think it was her curiosity in God, the religious world, which was new for her and her life, and she wanted to understand this new experience, this new existence, God. Yes. So I think this was the reason for her to be interested in that. Yeah.
I guess just a quick follow-up on that then. I wonder if she gives any indication. Did she recognize right away when she had this first experience that it was an experience of God? Or is that something that she came to understand? It just seems, if you were someone who didn't believe in God, to have an experience such as the one that she had, where she felt this warm light inside of her, that she would straightforwardly identify that as a mystical experience, if you didn't believe in God already.
Yeah, I think this experience, which she had never before, brings her to the idea that it only can be the experience of God, because she has no other scientific hints which could be the reason why she has this experience or had these experiences. So I think at first it was not clear for her that this is some sort of religious or mystical experience, but I think later it was more and more clear for her that this light which flows into her can only be a religious or mystical experience. Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned with these other experiences, she has these telepathic experiences or hearing voices, whether it's voices of other living people or dead people or whatever. I wonder if you could explain then what is the relationship between what Walther defines as mystical experiences, which she calls the direct encounters with God, and other types of religious experiences, on the one hand, that aren't necessarily these direct encounters with God, and those other more paranormal experiences on the other hand. So what's the relationship between these different types of experiences?
Yeah, I think, as I said in my talk, and as you said, the mystical experiences are the only way to experience God. This is what Walther says. And with the help of these experiences, it is possible to explain whether God exists or not. So this is her idea of these mystical experiences. But if we take a look at this term religious experiences, can't find any definition of that in her book Phenomenology of Mysticism. So I tried to analyze the relation between those terms, and I think that she understands religious experience as a part of mystical experiences. So if we think about the communication with God, I think she called it notification from God. So I think we can call this religious experiences, but for Walther it is a mystical experiences. So I think, religious experiences are part of mystical experiences. Maybe we can say this is the upper term, and religious experiences are part of them. So yes, I would say this is the relation between mystical experiences and religious experiences in Walther's view. And you also asked for paranormal experiences. I think, this is telepathy. In Walther's view, it is a paranormal experience. But if we take a closer look at her description of telepathy, we will see that both telepathy and mystical experience help Walther to recognize the existence of God. Walther wrote a lot about the concept of telepathy in her book, Phenomenology of Mysticism. And in her view, telepathy is an important aspect to experience other persons and experience God, especially if you are in a community with God or other persons. Walther herself had some telepathic experiences. She described them in her book, Phenomenology of Mysticism. But yeah, especially Fender, her supervisor, criticized her because of her concept of telepathy, because he thought that it is only a suggestion of random events which occurred randomly, one behind the other. So, for example, Walther talked about experiences where she heard voices in her head, and she was wondering who talked to her in her thoughts. So yeah, and later, I don't know, maybe a few weeks later, she find the person who was thinking of her at that time. So, but I can understand why Fender is very critical here and say it's only there are only some events which are randomly one behind the other. So yeah, I'm not really sure if this is this is a topic for phenomenology here, but it was Walther's concept and her idea to use it to experience God and to find out if God really exists.
Yeah, so following up on that again, I mean, you're describing mystical experiences in her work. She talks about feeling this inner warmth or feeling the presence of God in some way. But when we talk normally about mystical experiences or religious experience, there's this general belief that many people have that God speaks to that in some sort of way. Now, whether or not they hear that directly as a voice or something, I don't know. But would there be something that makes those two experiences phenomenologically distinct? How would you know if you were hearing the voice of God versus hearing the voice of someone else through a telepathic experience? Because as you've just said, she didn't really know what the origin was. She couldn't identify who was the person who was thinking these things or communicating these ideas to her. So does she anywhere describe what it is that makes these two things phenomenologically distinct?
No, I'm sorry, but I have to say no, because I never read anything in her book about that. Because the problem with her book is that she always thinks that it is normal, or that it is obviously true that she hears these voices and that she knows that she can be in contact with God. And so sometimes it's really hard because we don't have any reasons why we think that this is true, and this is a real problem with this book, because for someone who is not a religious person or whatever, it is really hard to understand why for her this can only be true. And so there is no I can't give any answer about that, because there's nothing in her book about that. Yes.
Okay, well, something else I'm interested is this, the feeling of warmth that she describes. And at one point in your talk, you explained that mystical experiences for Gerda Walther are physical experiences. So what does she mean when she states that mystical experiences are physical experience? Does she mean that there is a bodily component always or necessarily in such lived experiences? Or does she mean something else, which is physical? And is this an extension in some way that you use on mind-body interaction? So in the earlier parts of the book, when she's talking about the person and describing how it is that the will or the volition, this aspect of the person as a psychical spiritual entity is able to act on the body. So are those things related in some way? I was just curious as to what are your thoughts about these things and what is the physical aspect of mystical experiences?
Yeah, so I think I can say that there is a bodily component of such lived experiences. As I said, Walther always used this metaphor of light, and in her view, there's some sort of beam of light which flows into her body while she has a mystical experiences. And yeah, this sort of light heats the body from within, from inside. So this warm and heat aspect is the point why it is bodily and why she feels it. And yeah, it was the same with this experience in the train. It's just a little bit like he's get asleep, you know. So I think it's always compared. We always have this experience and always a physical aspect, which is bodily. Yeah, but I'm not sure if it is some sort of tension. So I think. I think that Walther always means that there is an interaction between the spirit and the body. And Walther herself had mystical experiences. She always describes a combination of a spiritual and bodily experience, as I said, with the warm light. And this is what I can say about the physical experiences here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, whatever it means exactly here by physical. So as you say, it seems like there is some bodily component. And why I asked if there's some sort of connection to her views about mind-body interaction has to do with when she describes these experiences. She says that this light comes from within her, but it's not emanating from her in some way. It's as if it's from some external location, but it's within her in some way. So it's in part of the background in which the I is embedded in a self or something. And she's talking about this description of the person. So it's kind of an interesting metaphysical concept she has here about how God is working from within you somehow on your body, but from some external non-spatial location. Yeah. Okay, so my next question has to do a little bit with the way in which Walther sort of seems to think systematically about things. Particularly, she often divides things up into threes, and essentially often works in these tripartite type systems, which is of course typical in philosophy. This is, at least everyone will remember in Plato the tripartite soul. So we have the human being in Walther's work as first the lived body, the soul, and the spirit. So those are the three aspects of a human being, on my understanding of what she says. And the individual person is made up of an ego or I center, the self, and essence. And so if I'm understanding those divisions correctly, I wonder then, is there something similar, or is there some sort of three aspect view being described when she talks about this triad, the person, the community, and God? Is there any sort of relationship between all of these various systems of threes that she's coming up with?
Yeah, well, so if we take a closer look at these three aspects: person, community, and God, we will see that this is not the same with the other systems which you described before or enumerated. In her dissertation on social communities, Walther explains that there is a relation between a community and God. So only the second and the third part. If you want to understand and if you find the real essence of a social community, you need God. Only with the help of God it is possible to understand the essence. So this is the same with Walther's analysis of the essence of a person, as I talked about that on my talk. So only with the help of God it is possible to experience one's own essence completely in its purity. So, but yeah, these are the second and the third aspect. But in relation to the person, there is no need to be part of a social community. So it can happen that you as a person will have the experience of inner joining, which is very important for the social community, so that you are a part of the social community, but not necessary. It can happen, but it is no need to be part of a social community. So, but in relation to the other two aspects, so human being and individual person, which you asked for, I would say that these tripartite systems are parts of separate systems, I would call that. So in Walther's view, the body, the soul, and spirit are parts of a human being. And the ego center and self and essence are parts of a person. But there is no separate system which includes the three aspects: person, community, and God. So I think this is not the same here. This is my interpretation of Walther's dissertation here, and I would say it's not the same as the other tripartite systems.
So if you can just elaborate on something. So I think it was something that came up in your talk, or maybe it's something else that I've read or that you and I have discussed. This idea of how Walther thinks that God grounds the essence of individuals. But does he also ground in some way the community? Like, is God necessary in order for there to be community among individuals?
Yes and no. So if you want to have the highest community, social community, this is important, the social community, then it is important to have God inside and God has to be part of this social community. Because in Walther's view, this is the highest version of a social community. But if you have I would say a normal social community, then it is enough to have you have a joining act with the other persons, and yes, the community consists of only persons. But this is I can't say that because Walther thinks that God also is a person. So I would say it's enough that the community consists of human persons and not divine persons. And
So in that case of the highest form of community, where God is involved, what sort of a role, or what sort of functional component does God play in that, or maybe what characterizes this highest form of community? What makes it different than other types of communities between individual persons?
Yeah, that's really interesting because Walther I think it's only one sentence in her dissertation where she described that this highest form of social community only consists with God. So that's it. There are no other comments about that. So I just tried to combine her book Phenomenology of Mysticism, where she described the community with God, and to to combine it with her dissertation, and this is my analysis of it. And I think, I can't say, and I know she said that the highest version or the highest form of the social community is when you live in this sphere of God, in this divine sphere, and then you are part of the highest form, but that's it. There's nothing else in her dissertation about that. And so but this is very interesting, and I tried to analyze that in a more detailed way, to combine the two books, the dissertation and her Phenomenology of Mysticism, to understand what kind of community is that God. Yes.
Okay, so my next question continues on with this idea of God being the essential ground, essence of a person. So I'm wondering, what exactly does she mean when she says that God is the essential ground of the essence of a person? So she seems to have in mind that individual persons have individual and predetermined essences, or maybe predetermined is the correct idea, that they're externally determined. So the essence of me as an individual is not determined by myself necessarily, but it's determined by God. I think this is a pretty non-trivial philosophical claim, since the idea that there are individual essences on the one hand, and the notion of persons, individual persons and essences at all on the other, are both points of philosophical dispute. And so I was just wondering if you could say more about this. And just sort of following up on that, does Walther presuppose that God grounds the essence of individual persons, if that's what she means? Or is this something that she claims to discover through phenomenological analysis? So that question really, is that something she just assumes, or is that something that she's able to somehow deduce?
So yes, I think in relation to the first question, what does it mean that God is the essential ground of the essence of a person? Yeah, in Walther's view, it means that every person has its ground in God. So only if you find or experience God, you have the opportunity to find or recognize your own essence, or maybe you can say your own personality. So yes, Walther presupposes that God grounds the essence of individual persons. If this would be not the case, I think Walther cannot say that you need to find God to understand or find your own essence or your essential characteristics. But Walther do not say this explicitly, that these are just my thoughts, because I try to combine it and try to understand it. But she says in a clear way that every person has its ground in God. So yeah, this is so God is the ground of the essence of individual persons. But but I'm not really sure if Walther says that there are I'm not sure if I understand the question correct, because maybe you can just say a few more words about these predetermined essence. I'm not really sure if I answered your question or.
Yeah, so what seems clear to me is that she thinks that it's necessary to have some sort of a relationship with God in some way in order to see yourself as you really are.
Yeah.
In order to experience your own essence. But that seems to imply that on the one hand, you have an essence. So you would not only really would have an essence, not just as a human being And as a female human being, so there'll be some set of essential characteristics that make you that thing. But there'd be some essential characteristics that make you the individual person that you are. And it seems to be that she's saying because you don't have access to these things, that those exist independently of you, externally from your own experience of yourself. And you only have access to them through some sort of mystical experience with God. And I guess I just wonder, how does she come to that conclusion?
I'm not really sure if she would say that they're external, these essence or characteristics. I would say that in Walther's view, it's more like that the person and God are close together, you know? Maybe they're one. If you find him, then you are one. So I think, I'm not really sure that this is just my first idea about that, but if you read her book, Phenomenology of Mysticism, you have the idea that the person and God, that God is within yourself. And so I think I can't say that the characteristic of the essence is external, but you need to have God inside yourself to find yourself. So I think this is how the way how Walther tries to explain it. Yeah,
I think that there's something interesting here for you all, because in her correspondence with Husserl, one of the letters between them talks about Husserl's concept of habitus and sort of character of the individual. And it seems to be here that she's responding to that in some way. So how is it that we're able to see ourselves as we are in ourselves, or something like that? How do we understand this being that is myself? It's not given to myself in experience, but it takes on these different characteristics and habits. That seems to be something different than this pure I that is just going around experiencing the world. And so I wonder there if she's attempting in her analysis of the person to explain or to give some sort of theory about how this works. And then maybe this notion of God is doing some really useful philosophical work for her in some way. In a sense, it's filling in some sort of gap. We need some mechanism in order to experience ourselves as we are in ourselves. Mm-hmm. And God, some absolute objective vantage point, satisfies that. And so I wonder here if there's actually, some sort of sophisticated metaphysical argument that she's actually trying to make that isn't really borne out clearly by the text. Yeah. But I think that's something just to give further thought to.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
My next question has to do with this distinction that she makes between the soul and the spirit. So I was wondering if you could describe what the difference is between these things. Also, Walther seems to describe the soul as a source of emotions and the source of volition or seat of the will. And this is similar to the theory of emotions and motivation and striving and action that we get in the work of the teacher, Alexander Wenger. But is the soul rational as well? That's something you didn't touch on in your talk. And so, again, this is one of these two-part questions. So the first part is, what's the difference between the Seele and Geist on the one hand, and then is the soul the rational component of the person, as well as the emotional and volition part?
Yeah, so what I can say at first is that the soul has no rational aspects. So for Walther, I think it's very similar to Fender's idea. The soul is the source of emotions, and Walther always talks about that the soul is located nearby the heart. So this is a symbol for her to show that the soul is a source for emotions. Walther doesn't say a lot about the soul, because I think for her it's really easy to understand the soul is the source of emotions. Yeah, and she only tries to describe how these sorts of emotions rise up and so on. But yeah, I just can say that it's nearby the heart and it's full of emotions. Yeah, the spirit is not so clear, I think. He describes it as a seeing and recognizing light. The world of the spirit has its own region, which includes the spiritual essence of human being. So she said there is spiritual law, spiritual willing, values, and recognizing, which arise from the spirit. But Walther's view, the spirit is not identical with the intellect. So now we have to think about, okay, if the soul has no parts of rational aspects, what is about the spirit? But Walther says the spiritual beam of light is something that can help you to make decisions. So when I read this sentence, I was thinking, okay, if it helps you to make decisions, then it should have some rational aspects. And I think this is part here. And the spirit arises beyond and behind yourself, and it helps you to clarify things and to get things in a clearer light. So I think this is also some metaphor he uses here. This warm light also means that you will be enlightened, maybe, or brighten something. And I think she has in mind that this spirit also helps in making decisions, and it will the spiritual light is not rational, but you use your mind in a rational way to come to a decision. So it's really hard to give a clear answer here, but because Walther always used this metaphor of light, I think it has also an illuminating effect here, that maybe it's rational, maybe not. She doesn't say that, but it helps you to make decisions.
So this is kind of interesting, because then we have a view of the soul and consciousness that's very different than a lot of her contemporaries. So this doesn't really fit with certainly what Husserl is saying about consciousness, or what a lot of post-Kantian theories of mind look like. But it does sound similar to other mystical views. So the way you're describing the spirit sounds, at least on the face of it, like this theory of the daemon, where consciousness is some sort of a receiver, the mind is some sort of receiver of some spiritual entelechy that exists outside of you that guides your actions. And so that's interesting, because that would kind of fit with her interest in mysticism, and perhaps with Gnosticism and other things as well. So it'd be interesting to see where she's deriving her sort of theory of the spirit and of the mind from, I think, in that sense.
Yeah.
And I guess the final question that I had is that Walther seems to believe that one cannot see one's true self or their own essence in its pure form without the help of God. And so this is something that we've touched on already. But I was wondering if you could expand on this a little bit. So why is it that through inner perception or phenomenological reflection on myself, I'm not actually able to see myself as I am in myself, or I'm not able to see my own essence? So does she think that inner perception or this inner reflection is just as corruptible as external perception is? And that's why we need God, some sort of a pure way of viewing ourselves, or some sort of objective way of viewing ourselves? What is the real reason, or could you hazard a guess as to what is the reason why she thinks it's essential that God allows us to see ourselves as we truly are?
Yeah, so I think, as I said before, that Walther means that you can see one's true self only with the experience. When you experience yourself in a spiritual and divine sphere, where you will be enlightened to God, to see your true essence or personality. And at this point, Walther uses again, of course, this metaphor of light, to show that human beings can be enlightened if they experience God and live in the deepest divine sphere. But I think in relation to your question about the inner perception or reflection, I think Walther always uses inner perception or reflection. And I don't think, I don't think that he uses external perception. And I think that Walther would always prefer inner perception. And I think this is the only way or the only source which is reliable. So I think this is the reason why she always uses personal experiences to describe mystical experiences and so on, because I think in her view they are the only one which are reliable. So this is what I can say. But the reason I don't know why it is like this. I'm not really sure. Why Walther thinks that only God can be the one who show your own essence or your in a pure form. So, and I think maybe I have to take a closer look at her biography or autobiography, her book, because I think it's really a personal thing that she wants that God is the reason for your personality. And but at this point at my research I have no idea why it is God, and she doesn't explain it in her book Phenomenology of Mysticism. It's, as I said, it's always the same. She just say that this is the only truth, that only God can be like this. So but there are no reasons for that.
I guess, see, what I would have thought, if I just had to conjecture as to what she was thinking, there's this long tradition of using this metaphor of light in the sense that reason is this light that goes around shining itself on the world and revealing the world to us. But if reason is some source of light that looks out and reveals the world to us, how can we shine it back on itself? So the source of light can't reveal itself to you because a light source can't turn itself back into itself. And so what I thought maybe she was trying to explain is that then you need to have some sort of mediated experience of yourself. You can't look into yourself directly.
Mm-hmm.
That you would need God as some sort of separate entity who is able to see your soul.
Yep.
And only through some sort of relationship with him could your essence actually be revealed to yourself. But as I said, that's just me really conjecturing as to what might be going on there, and whether or not that's taking the metaphor of light a little bit too literally. I don't know, but that was what my initial thought was. Maybe this is what she sort of has in mind, but if she doesn't really say anything like that, I mean,
yeah. But I think that's true. I think you have to take this metaphor in such a literal way. I was thinking about that a very long time, because I think you can only understand this metaphor of light if you really understand it like this, that something will be enlightened or something will be seen which was not there before it was dark or whatever. So I think you have to read it like this. Only then you can understand why you can't see or you can't find your pure essence and so on. I think it's, yeah, that's right. I think you have to read it like this. Yeah.
Well, thank you for entertaining all of my questions. It seems like there's quite a bit here from the people watching as well. So I will hand it over to Susie to deal with the rest of the questions. But thank you very much for your answers to mine.
Thank you, Rodney.
Thanks to both of you, because that was very interesting. And to follow up to what you just said about the light and mystical experience, I was wondering if it's possible to replace the light with the experience. I mean, in the sense that when we talk about religious experience, in phenomenology, we tend to say, okay, can we really do a phenomenology of religious experience? Is it really possible to talk about an experience that is religious? What's the mark that distinguishes a normal experience from a religious one? So there are scholars arrived at saying there's no religious experience. We might talk about the religious structure of the experience, but not about the religious experience, because God cannot be experienced. Now, following your interesting debate on this metaphor of light, I was wondering, pushing it a little bit further, if this light is in fact the experience we can start from in analyzing a mystical phenomenon. I mean, if after all it's the most concrete thing we have to start from, to start for a quest on the mystical sense, this sense of being enlightened. I don't know, this is just a suggestion that came up from
I think it's really interesting, because if I understand you right, you think that we can use the word experience for the sort of light which Walther experiences. So I think it is the way how Walther tries to describe this experience. So I think it's equal, really, because I think she tries to find a metaphor or anything which describes these experiences, because she knew that there are a lot of persons who cannot feel this and will not understand what she is talking about. So she tries to do it with these metaphors, and yes, that's a really interesting idea to describe it in this way, and to say, okay, this, maybe we can say, we will not say experience, but this sort of light which arise. Yeah, so this, I think we can understand Walther like this. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I'm asking a question on behalf of Mr. Cooley, my students from East Bay. And well, he was very interested in your lecture and the exchange with Dr. Parker. And he asked several questions. So this is one of them. What exactly is the psychic self then? And is there only the telepathic channel to communicate with God? I mean, to enhance, to allow a communication between the psychic self and God, or there are other channels? Yeah, that's good.
Maybe I will start with the psychic self at first. So, as I said in my talk, the self is some sort of inward psychic background where the I or the ego is embedded. And within this background, there are various lived experiences which flow through the I. Walther also called this psychic, or she doesn't say psychic, she always says self, just self. Walther calls the self also some subconsciousness, but this is really not clear. So just only a remark in her book. And the truth of the self can only be seen in a full knowledge through God, but only if the ego communicates with God. So this is the point. The self is not possible, or the self can't communicate with God. It's only the ego, because the ego is I don't know how to call it. The ego is the sphere who experiences with God. And the ego communicates with God, and the self is only some sort where the experiences are embedded and some sort of background, psychic background. So at first, Walther thinks that the ego or the I center communicates with God, but there are other, beside the telepathic way to communicate with God, there's also a way to communicate via this sort of notifications. I talked about that in in my last talk. And I don't know. The point is that if you have these notifications.
Sorry if I interrupted you. What is a notification for her?
I don't know what. I don't know how to. It's just a message. It's to get a message from God.
This is something, a sign that you find on the street, a book that you read that is particularly meaningful, an idea. Well, how does
I don't know. She doesn't say any more about that. But she just say you can get a message from God. I don't know. Maybe you will hear voices, or you find something on the street. I don't know. But this is also a way to communicate with God. And this is not a telepathic way, which is also possible. I think it's maybe I don't know the English word. Maybe I will ask Rodney if he can help me. Do you know beten? Pray? Yeah, pray. Yeah, I think pray. Yeah. So it's just pray to God, and So I think these are the two aspects, or the two ways to get in touch with God. And it's always the I which communicates with God, and not the self or other aspects.
Because the self doesn't have a leading subject.
Yeah.
He is thanking you.
Yes.
Yeah, that helps a lot. And there was another question always from Patrick, which is something that Rodney was referring to as well. If there can be more to say, I don't know if there's something more to say about her Marxist background and her religious call and vocation.
The point is, I'm not really sure, because Walther herself doesn't say a lot about her life as a Marxist. So I just tried to analyze her dissertation to get more information about that, because she refers a lot to Marx and other Marxists, or who love the idea of Marxism. And this is really hard. I can't give you any information about that. I have to take a closer look at this and analyze her dissertation in that way. But what I can say is that, of course, he is a socialist, and you if you read her dissertation, you will see that she's a socialist, and you see it in her idea of social community. It's not the individual which is the center of the community. It is the community as a whole which is important. And these are some ideas of socialism which she included in her dissertation. So I think socialism is very important for her and her life, and she writes like this.
Great. And the self seems to be, after all, at this point, a community as well. I mean, it's. If you can expand on the notion of essence as God and the self, could that be seen in the perspective of a social community, or is it something else?
Do you mean the self? Which part?
Right.
Where it is located?
Because the ego is the subject, and is the only, as far as I'm understanding, a point of unification of the individual. But then you have the self, you have the community, you have the essence of God. So everything seems to be egoless, in fact, in Walther's description. I mean, it seems that the intersubjective community has a first position instead of, individuals. Should be something that maybe we should recollect in our society today. Who knows?
Yes. So if I understand you right, I think it's really difficult because you think about her dissertation on social community, you always have to think about its ontology, this ontological description. So she tries to describe the social community from two sides, from a, I will call it an inner or an ego side, which tries to explain the community from the bottom up, from the individual to the social community. And in her second part of her dissertation, she tries to explain it from the community as a whole to come to the individual. So it's always an interpretation how we describe it, because she only uses an ontological description for this. And I would say Walther always says that the whole is more important than the ego. Of course, the social community needs the ego, because otherwise we don't have any communities. But she says the whole is more than its parts. And if I understand it right, I'm not sure, but the self also has an important part here, because if you are in a social community with God or with persons, you have the others within yourself. This is really interesting. Yeah, you have them within yourself, and they are in yourself, in your background. And this is her idea of social communities. And therefore, you see, she always uses this combination of ego, self, and essence. And these three aspects are always combined in a human being. Yeah. And this is,
Thank you. And we have another question coming. about her religion. So, did she belong to an organized religion? What kind of creed she and rituals and observance she was faithful to?
I think she was a Catholic later, of course. I don't know how old she was, but she was a little bit older. She become a Catholic, and I know that she was part of Catholic churches and so on, and she was, yeah, a part of this kind of community, religious community, and yeah, I think until she died in 1977. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It doesn't seem we have more questions here. I check. Yeah. Well, thanks. You work hard. We asked you of questions during this session. I want to remind again the community of the people who are watching this video that Julia works for the Center of Women Philosophers and Scientists, and they are going to organize an incredibly beautiful summer school. So if you want to know more, you can check a Phenomenology blog or their website. Sorry for the sound here. And once again, thank you, Julia and Rodney, for this interesting lecture today, this interesting exchange. And yeah,
thank you. I want to say thank you to Rodney and to the other persons who joined us and asked me some questions. And thank you very much for your interest in that topic. And of course, you can write me some emails if you have more questions that we can get in touch about that. Yeah.
Thanks. It was really good.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.